to joinery. Always be on the lookout for modern joints. Those were never used in antique furniture. Traditional joints include dovetails, mortise and tenon, lap joints, and miters. If traditional joining occurs in these joints, it can't be seen. Therefore, the only way to check is to use x-rays, and at times you may also see hidden nails and/or screws. Tooled surfaces. Study 18th through 19th century hand tools and the surfaces they made. This can be a study within itself and can take a lot of extra prep time. When you understand surfaces, feel across the grain for the ridges between the plane furrows, whether it be carving tools, hand planes, or scrapers. A single source shining obliquely on the wood surface, a light source to look for the revealing highlights and shadows of a plane surface. Look at every surface at an oblique angle, 35, 40, 30 degrees. Tools driven across this by hand, a material itself by nature is uneven in texture, making a perfectly flat surface almost impossible to achieve. Tool marks found on secondary timbers would definitely mark a piece before the 19th century. Mechanical planers were introduced in about 1810 and leave tiny repetitive ridges perpendicular to the grain of the wood. You will find perpendicular saw marks on 18th century backboards, undressed surfaces, and the undersides of drawers and on the insides of cases. These marks were created by pit saws. Many times the maker did not plane off the pit saw marks, thus economizing time and effort. The favorite mark of a maker was a scored, scribed, or scratch line because such a line is clear and narrow, truly precise. These lines will still have stayed the test of time. We see them today enabling us to trace the steps of the craftsman. Hidden evidence. Hidden drilling can be examined for the roundness of the drilled hole. Up until the mid-19th century, spoon bits were used for drilling, resulting in less than round holes, also with a gimlet point in the bottom of the cavity. X-rays can reveal the type of cavity. The turner's chisel left marks on chair legs and balustrades. These were the result of turning in green wood at very slow speeds. In the period, the turner would not sand the marks. Today, since the mid-19th century, lathes turn at very high speeds, and it has become a ritual to make the turnings as smooth as possible with abrasive papers. It is the same for wood carving chisels. Carving in the green, usually only measuring for the next repetition by eye, when the green wood dried, handmade irregularities were only magnified significantly. Since the mid-19th century, with the advent of carving machinery and a different mindset of a contemporary craftsman for perfection and machine-like repetition, has been made a mantra. Even wood turners did not use calipers. Compare turnings and understand the human element. Veneer. Veneer has a bad rap. It doesn't deserve. Collectors have condemned veneer as fakers cover up, overlooking the fact that fakers cover up, overlooking the fact that fakers abuse all decorative techniques, misusing carving and much more. In Europe, veneer was used as an economy of materials. Veneering was a highly skilled, demanding, and time-consuming technique. Borders and highlights, adding contrast and geometric patterns, inlet to the core wood called inlay. Various metal and gems, and some inlay in Europe of tortoise wood. To recognize veneer from solid wood, look for the edge of the veneer at the side surface in question. Sometimes an amalgamation of inlays from several geographic areas gives away a reproduction. Adhesives. Veneer problems, lost, loose, and bubble, are also adhesion or adhesive problems. Until the middle of the 20th century, glues were made from the hides and bones of animals, fish, and all had to be applied hot. While glue in the 20th century development has very little flexibility compared to its predecessor. When dried, high glue is brown and white glue is clear. Nails. Nails, screws, hinges, handles, and locks, whether original and in place, or, as is often the case with old furniture, replaced, missing, provide facts of history by their appearance or by the shadows and marks they leave behind. These can date work, reveal repairs, reworking, and reused elements can convict a fake at hand. Nails until 1800 were made by hand by a nail rod of iron, producing nail heads with either no head, rose head, or an irregular mushroom top head. After 1800, machines cut nails out of flat iron stock. In the 1800s, cut nails were replaced by wire nails. Hence, we have shaft shapes of square, rectangular, and round. The top of the shank is usually visible, as when the wood shrinks. The nail protrudes proud of the surface. Beware of rusty nails with rusty shanks and with non-rusty wood. Reused and new nails generally do not have time to darken the surrounding wood. Inspect nail holes wherever you expect to find nails. The dating of screws is mostly pre-1850. Post-1850 have a pointed gimlet ends so they would have direct easily into the surface of the wood. Pre-1850 are all handmade, and they had flat ends, and that the end filed screw slot is generally off-center. The threads of these screws generally have flat top edges. The threads barely taper at all and are very irregular. New screws in an antique require new, enlarged, and lengthened holes. In redoing furniture, sometimes hinges were replaced due to screws not fitting in them. Cotter pins. Cotter pins fasten wood lids and early brass handles. Two interlocked cotter pins make a strong, serviceable hinge. The primary hinge of in the 17th century. They left irregular holes with two oppositely radiating indentations into the wood surface. They were used on crude furniture throughout the 18th century. As far as hinges are concerned, look for packing out or round replacement butt hinges. Become familiar with the styles of handles and key escutcheons because they clue you in on the spacing of the holes they required and left behind. Wood knobs were standard on drawers and doors on 17th century furniture, but continued into the next century on Shaker furniture. The bail and loop of Queen Anne style required two cotter pins. During the first half of the 18th century, the back plates were hammered with punch work for an engraved appearance on the front surface. On similar pulls, you will see bruising or indentations in the drawer fronts where the bail or drop would land upon being released by the hand. Larger plates would catch the bail and or drop. Also look for ghosting of the outline of the hardware on the surface of the surrounding wood of the drawer fronts or facade due to light oxidation. Remember that the easiest way and surest ways to discover a married piece is to find out the history of the brasses on one case is, if one case is different from that of the other. Random holes may indicate as a reused piece of wood. Extra holes may have been drilled for fallacious distraction. Sometimes replacing brass is required only drilling one new hole and the other would be used again. Hence, sometimes putting the pull or piece of hardware off center. Either nuts or bolts are irregular. Early bolts are usually square at the top of the shank, where modern ones are round. Other nuts tend to be round or made to fit the one bolt only. Early Rococo plates have hand-filed edges, and when turned over, one can see the evidence of sand casting. Seeing a grainy appearance or mottled appearance of texture, 19th century knob handles were of brass, glass, or wood. These knobs screwed onto a threaded shaft, and inside the drawer a nut screwed on the other end. The 19th century was a revival of all previous shapes and styles of hardware, and most not appearing in the best proportions.